Jalen's not the quarterback to drop back and throw the football all over the yard every single week. So if you don't have the offensive line and you are getting 3.4 yards per carry with Saquon Barkley, what is the path to victory now for this team? What is the path offensively for this team to manage that type of change? Welcome in, everybody, to a Monday edition of Birds 365. Week 6 in the NFL, just about wrapped up with a game to play here on Monday night. We are back live for another week on Birds 365. Hope everybody has a great week ahead of them and had a great weekend this past weekend. Don't forget to hit that like button on your way in. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday morning, my friend?
Doing well. Better than I don't know if I'm doing as well as James Franklin because he's got a $50 million budget. No, I don't think he's doing too well. I was about to say better than James Franklin, but no, probably not. So anyway, yeah. It's been a good run.
To park up on the couch, John, as long as he wants.
Yeah, exactly. So, I had to rethink that right as I was saying it, but hasn't been a great run for Philadelphia sports. Hopefully the Eagles get back to it. Fix some things, but Philly's losing, Eagles 2 in a row, which is a catastrophe, evidently. And
it was compounded. It was Sunday and Thursday. It was like the same week, dude. Same week, double losses for this team.
Yeah. So, gotta get back to winning.
Real quick. I mean, we'll get into some of the Week 6 games yesterday and just the thought process there. We'll get into some of the reports that are coming out that are, we'll talk about how much merit there is to them or how much truth there is to them. But 4 days now, 3 days removed from that pretty ugly loss, John, to the New York Giants, to say the least. Where is the thought process 4 days later, John? I know we're going to turn the page and get ready to prep for Week 7 here, Eagles-Vikings this upcoming weekend. But 4 days removed, how's the thought process evolved on that game, John?
Oh, not much. I mean, that's a bad loss. That is a bad. There's no way to put a lipstick on that pig. That's bad. That's a bad football team you lost to. That's a team you typically dominate. That's a team you should dominate with a rookie quarterback and a rookie running back, and they just beat you into the ground. And like the most disturbing, I think it's ironic because nobody stops talking about the Eagles offense, which by no means has been good. Not trying to say that, but I think in that particular game, they're the ones that at least showed some improvement, I guess, at least from the passing perspective. And, the defense kind of fell apart and with a couple injuries, high-profile injuries, but nonetheless, you hope to persevere better than that.
Right.
And one thing you see, if you watched any football, the injury rate around this league is insane to the point that I there was an Eagles player who I mentioned before, and who said, hey, guys are just soft now. And I'm starting to believe, and it wasn't an old guy; it was a younger player. I mean, the injuries on these particular teams, and by no means they're a heck of a lot hard. I don't like saying that word. This is a direct quote from a player, not me. They used to play through things. They don't play through things anymore, and that's what I think the difference is. But so to say, well, they didn't have Jalen Carter, they didn't have Quinyon Mitchell for the majority of the game. Well, that's take a look around. And some teams, by the way, fall apart. Baltimore. Some teams persevere. Tampa Bay.
How about Tampa Bay? 5-1, boy.
Tampa Bay was down to their fourth receiver, was their, fourth, fifth, and sixth receivers. I think fifth and sixth. I mean, it's so I'm not using that as an excuse. I just can't, because so many other teams. And we talked a lot about the Temu off season and all that kind of stuff. They're just not as deep, nor anybody who thought they were going to be as deep was probably, had the Eagles colored glasses on after all the attrition they suffered in the offseason. So they're not equipped to handle these types of injuries, even short term. They're just not nearly as deep as they were and have been. And that was, you got to look at Howie Roseman, give him all the flowers, but hey, they decided to reset in the off season for what's upcoming, and you see part of the payment coming for that.
Right.
Have guys ready to step up. It's easy to say next man up, but when the next man up doesn't even reach
And is it more worthy of criticism, or is it more of just you've kind of regressed to where everybody else is, and we had a
well,
rare
definitely there's no dominant teams. You saw Detroit,
right? But I mean, even
Kansas
last year we
City.
had this depth where Isaiah Rodgers is coming off the bench and he's playing.
Yeah,
like
you don't have that. Yeah.
we don't have that. But nope, does anybody have that? Is my
No,
point. You know what I mean? We had a
no.
rare instance
There's
last
no
year.
who's great right now that you go, wow.
Yeah, and we got to run through some of these teams that are 4-2 or better, and it's just like I can't tell who's a contender and who's a pretender yet. It's tough to look at. I mean, the Steelers are sitting at 4-1. The Colts and the Jaguars are 5-1 Colts and 4-2 Jaguars. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah, I mean,
amazing what
I
we're
think the
looking at.
Colts might be legit, but you got to believe in Daniel Jones, and I know nobody's going to believe in Daniel Jones, even though I think he's been the MVP through week
I'm a
6.
Daniel Jones believer. I mean, he was in New York. If people believe in Saquon Barkley, why don't they believe in him? He had a
No,
same
they
shitty
don't.
offensive line in New York.
They don't. Saquon believes in him. I'll tell you that.
I mean,
Yeah,
even over in the NFC, John, we got 3 teams in the West are 4-2. The Niners, the Seahawks, and the Rams, all 4-2. Bucks are 5-1. The North, you got the Packers 3-1-1. Lions are 4-2. And then in the East, obviously, Eagles are 4-2. Commanders are 3-2. They play tonight. I mean, there's a lot of different ways this thing can go.
yeah. I mean, the Eagles are still, if they can figure things out, and I think that's where people panic too soon. Yeah, they're not playing good football in mid-October. The goal is to play your best football like last year as the season gets into December and January. And they still have time to fix that. And I think it starts this week. And Minnesota is one of those teams that, all right, tell me who's playing. I don't know because they're another team. It's like the injury rate is insane over there. I don't know who's playing. Is Cashman coming back? Is Van Ginkel coming back? I don't know. But they're a different team when they're out there. They better play Carson Wentz. Are they? I don't know. Because if they play J.J. McCarthy, the Eagles are going to win. They were down 5 offensive linemen coming off their bye week, coming off their European trip. Who of that 5, who's going to be back? I don't know yet. So you might have a really tough game, or you might have an easy layup game, dependent on where you are. Because I don't expect Landon Dickerson to play again. I don't expect Quinyon Mitchell to play. I do expect Jalen Carter to play, and these are just early speculation.
Yeah, right. There's been nothing. When will we learn more about where we stand?
Well, Nick's going to talk today via Zoom, but you're not going to get anything injury-wise from him. So until we show up Wednesday, typical Sunday week, we're not going to know. But again, you can't complain because look at the other team. I mean, they got double-digit injuries. So
it's crazy. I was out of the house yesterday. I had my goddaughter's christening, my niece's christening. So I was at my brother's house all day, but I get notifications from the big Eagle, from the big NFL guys and the big Philly guys, but injury, all popping up on my notifications, man. I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot of injuries going on. So
crazy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Detroit was down, I think, their top 4 cornerbacks at one point last night.
Yeah, they got beat to the Chiefs last night. I did catch some of that game when we got back.
the Packers have, they're good, but they don't wow you. They're straight, Joe Flacco's going down the field and
Yeah.
scoring. So they're not wowing me. Nobody, Dallas has a good offense, but they lost because their defense is so bad.
Yeah, their defense is awful.
But George Pickens, George Pickens. It's like, what has George Pickens ever done? Now he's got Dak throwing him. He looks like what everybody thinks George Pickens is. Dude looks awesome.
Exactly. He does look good, George Pickens.
Yeah, and they don't even have CD Lamb. But Washington's hasn't had their quarterback, so I can't complain about injuries.
Well, what do you think we are right now? I mean, do you think the loss on Thursday, is it flush it and get back to where you are, or are you like, the dominance of this team that we've come to know of the last 20-something games where we all talked about they've 20-1, they're 18 straight, all these different things, and it almost felt like not only fans, but reporters, I don't want to speak for you guys, people in the league, the Eagles are this dominant aura, this dominant, thing about them where it's like almost nobody can beat them. That certainly I feel like is gone, but is this a game you flush it, John, or has your overall
I think you have to,
changed?
Well, it certainly has changed from they're not equipped to handle some significant injuries, even in the short term. They're just not equipped. And you've already seen it. You lost Nolan Smith on the edge, and then you start looking at, well, we talked about this in the offseason. I mentioned he's one of the most important players on the team, not because I think he reached that crux of being a superstar, just like if they don't have him, what do they have? And this is before they got Zadarius Smith. So they're even a little bit better than they would have been, but they're just not good enough. They lose Quinyon Mitchell to a hamstring, and you're like, oh my Lord, look what's out there. So, and if he's not going to play this week, and typically a hamstring is going to be difficult for, even with a couple extra days, it's going to be difficult for a cornerback to make it back, even with the lightest form of hamstring injury. So if you start looking at Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson again, maybe you have to throw Mac McWilliams in there. Maybe you have to throw Perry Nickerson in. Are you comfortable with that?
I mean, it almost feels like it can't get much worse. So whoever gives you – the only reason I think Perry might make some sense is because he's got at least some experience. But you could say the same with Adoree. So, what does that really mean?
And you don't have little Jordan Humphrey and Wan'Dale Robinson this week. You got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Now, again, if you don't have a quarterback to get those guys to football, so there's a lot of things that play into it, but that doesn't shape up as a good matchup on paper for the Eagles defense. But, this is also one of the worst, I think, run defense teams, at least from an advanced stat standpoint, because they had that weird trade where they traded Harrison Phillips, and Cashman's out or has been out, and Van Ginkel's out. So they've been playing Eric Wilson and Ivan Pace at linebacker. And those who remember Eric Wilson here, he's a good athlete, good, but he can't defend the run at all. So if you're ever going to get the running game going, this might be the week. And I would think that's how the Eagles will go into it. And then that whole philosophy, I mean, when you talk about that, have the Eagles lost their sort of identity or lost their sort of cachet? Well, until they get that running game back, the answer is yes. Because that's what gave them their cachet, let's be honest. And Saquon's, he wasn't bad against the Giants. It was actually a little bit of an improvement. But I mean, what is he averaging? 3.4 yards per carry, I think now. I mean, 5.8 last year, over 2,000. If you count the playoffs, I think it was well over 6. yards a
More on
carry.
is that mostly on the offensive line, you think? I do, but just want to get your perspective.
Well, I think it's a combination, but yeah, I think the offensive line is beat up. But I mean,
it's not as much. I'm not even saying that to knock on the offensive line. It's more just last year was, as you talked about on the show, John, at length, a historic offensive line. I mean, one GM told you it was one of the best offensive lines he's ever seen. Well,
yeah.
when you don't have that anymore, you're not going to get 5.8 yards per carry. You're not getting
No, yeah, but you're not going to get 5.8 and 2,005 yards, but you can't be at 3.4.
Yeah, right.
You know, this team is. Remember what they did with Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift. You at least got to get back to that level. And this is the week to start because this team is not very good. They're very undersized. They don't have a real nose tackle. You can move them off the ball. They don't have good linebackers unless Cashman comes back. This is the week to get that thing going, and it needs to get going because this is not a team you want dropping back 40 times. You don't. I don't know if people think that or envision that or want that. You don't want that because then the turnovers are going to start piling up.
Well, a lot of things change, John, if that can't happen for this team. I mean, obviously, because we've been such a run team. But what I mean by that is, I mean, this team last year's offense was so well equipped to play the way they play. It had the parts oiled, to run and throw when they needed to run. Now, if that offensive line isn't the same, John, I mean, that's why it's the number one concern for me, because if you don't have that offensive line, it's going to force you to play a different way. And what does that look like in Philadelphia? And do we have, look,
well, if you have to put
Jalen's not, as you just pointed out, Jalen's not the quarterback to drop back and throw the football all over the yard every single week. So if you don't have the offensive line and you are getting 3.4 yards per carry with Saquon Barkley, what is the path to victory now for this team? What is the path offensively for this team to manage that type of change?
Well, you become like everybody else, and that's pretty much what has happened. So that means you might have a good game, you might have a bad game, you might have a good game, you might have. They're going to have good games because they're talented,
right?
Even if they drop back 40 times, and you're going to go, wow, why don't you do that all the time? And then you're going to show up next week and you're going to have a bad game and you're going to lose and you're going to win 10 games instead of 14 games. And and then the playoffs are going to be nip and tuck and you might lose in the divisional round. So I think you're saying, how do you win at the Eagles standard, which is now the whole thing? Well, you can't win the whole thing probably that way with this team as it's currently built. And then you have to recede back in the off season and say, all right, if we can't do this anymore, we have to do some things differently when it comes to acquiring players and playing and coaches and all that kind of stuff.
Last year, you had the 31st ranked passing offense, and it largely didn't matter as much as we talked about it. Obviously, they went on to win the Super Bowl. They were one of the most historic running games of all time. All right, so you lose the running game this year, and the passing game is still where it is. It's like something's got
a little bit better. I've been checked.
Is it up from 31?
Well, it's up from 31.
Yeah, they did throw for 280 last week. So maybe it is up a little bit, a small smidge. It might be 28th or 29th.
There's some bad ones. It might have went up a couple spots. I haven't checked, but it might have went up a little bit because you got the New York Jets out there and teams like that. But
which I never want to be mentioned in a conversation with them anyway. So good Lord.
But that's how bad some of these passing attacks have gotten. So, but it's still not good. I mean, you're not trying to say it's good. And I think that's what frustrates everybody because they think it should be good. But really, there hasn't been a ton of evidence unless you go back to 2022. That's how far back you got to go to say where it's above average.
If you're Howie Roseman, John, what's the thought process right now? Is there a sweeping move you look? Do one of those big trades that we speculated on early, do they become more realistic? Do you think they would go down that road, or would any move more align with the Temu offseason that they had and just go for, cheaper, high upside players? And then obviously just address the speculation. Still a lot of this A.J. Brown talk, John, about whether they would trade him. We talked a lot about it a little bit pre-show, but I do want you to share on that because Diana, John, she is plugged in. I mean, she knows about the league. Now, that doesn't mean, there's some context to add to what she's put out there, but it's not some aggregator saying we're going to trade AJ Brown. Not that she said that, but just talk on that, and then maybe the
it hasn't changed. And I wrote about this on Sports Illustrated. Everybody can check it out if they want, but nothing's changed. I think the view from outside the building is steeped in sort of typical, like I say, there's a playbook in the NFL for disgruntled receivers, and everybody outside the organization is using that playbook, and that's, well, he's trying to force himself out, and maybe you can get him. And there's inside the building, there's been no evidence of that. I mean, that's not Howie's MO, is trading good players and letting them leave. His MO is
particularly in the middle of the season.
Is to get them in the building. So I think, a lot of that is manufactured from outside. And it really, if you go all the way back to the people in Boston, are trying to get a receiver. Now, not so much because they have Diggs and he's playing well. And they're playing well. They've been one of the surprise teams because AJ always had a good relationship with Mike Vrabel. So it was all the speculation based on that. Mike Vrabel never wanted to trade him. That was an organizational decision, even more than John Robinson, who lost his job over it, because they didn't want to pay AJ what he was going to get paid, basically. So everybody puts the Mike Vrabel thing together. Oh, maybe New England will go get him, yada, yada, yada. Same thing's happening now. They're saying, well, he's disgruntled. Maybe you can get him. Let's call. And, people are trying, but Howie to this point has said, yeah, we're not trading him. So it's really from outside of Philadelphia. And even if you read Diana's report.
That's what I was going to say. She did say Philadelphia insists they have no interest in trading him.
Yeah. It's people outside because they think, well, disgruntled receiver, that's how it works. Let's call. So, but
do you think there would be a point though where Howie, or maybe even Jeffrey, does say, hey, the juice is not worth the squeeze on this. AJ is it kind of, he has created some drama, for better or for worse. It is what it is, but he has. Jeffrey Lurie doesn't particularly love that. And with an offense that doesn't utilize him as much as, they could, do we ever get to a breaking point there, or you think, no, good player, they're not moving on?
Well, any player can force himself out of any situation. I always say, if they really, really want to. I don't see AJ going down that route. I don't think he's that type of person. But anybody can do that if they really, really want to. The Jeffrey Lurie aspect, you're right. I mean, because a move of that nature, Jeffrey's got to get involved at some point. And you mentioned this last week, so I checked into it a little bit, as much as you can, because Jeffrey's very cloistered. He does not like this offense. He has not changed.
I tried telling somebody that on Friday. I'm like, anybody that's been around here knows Jeffrey Lurie's always dreamed of a high flying offense, man.
Yeah. So I don't think, the old addition by subtraction, sending out a good, and think about where people forget, people get spoiled very, very quickly. We got to bring our buddy Jeff Kerr up here, but they get spoiled very, very quickly because remember how bad this team was at wide receiver before Devontae showed up first and then AJ? Remember how bad it was? Remember what Carson Wentz was forced to throw to when
Yeah.
he stinks when he's throwing the
Jalen Rager and Travis Fulgham his final year, I think it was.
I mean, and all of a sudden he's throwing for 300 yards because magically he's got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Yeah, I mean, be careful what you wish for. I'll say that
No
wide
doubt about it.
receiver.
We'll see how it all progresses. We do have week 7 coming up, week 6. So we have 2 games left in week 6. They'll commence tonight. So we do have a Monday night doubleheader. I'm going to read these games.
Stop that, NFL.
I think it's Commanders, Bears, and it's Bills, Falcons, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Bills at Falcons tonight, and then Bears at Commanders tonight. So an NFC East team on tonight. I'm sure everybody will be tuned in for that. That'll be a good game to see how the Bears stack up versus that Commanders team. Is everybody healthy, or is Jaden playing in that game? Yeah, Jaden's good, so he'll play in that game. So we'll be watching that tonight, and that'll wrap up week 6. Speaking of wrapping up, the Penn State Nittany Lions have wrapped up the James Franklin tenure, and he is done and dusted.